science enthusiasts. My name is Jason Zakowski. I'm a high school chemistry teacher and a science communicator, but I'm also the dog dad of Bunsen and Beaker, the science dogs on social media. If you love science and you love pets, you've come to the right place. Put on your lab coat, put on your safety glasses, and hold on to your tail. This is the Science Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Science Podcast. We hope you're happy and healthy out there. I'm recording this late on Halloween, so I know you're listening to this after Halloween. Hopefully it was a happy one, and hopefully you had a spooky good time. We always have a lot of fun in school on Halloween. Both Chris and I dress up as teachers, and I make a special trip to get dry ice to do a bunch of different dry ice experiments. Adam dressed up this year with a couple's costume with his girlfriend, so that was really cute. What's happening on the Science Podcast this week? In science news, we're going to take a look at this study from iScience about how insects can generate electricity. What? And in pet science, we're going to look at a study that checked out if your owner's voice made any difference to a cat. And our guest in Ask an Expert is lab technician Joy Spears. We are going to get the lowdown on working in a lab. So cool. Hey dogs, a bee moved into a new house. Guess what the hive did? Well, it threw the bee a house swarming party. Okay, on with the show, because there's no time like science time. This week in science news, let's take a look at a study that kind of concluded that insects make a lot of electricity. Now, I'm not talking the little bit of electricity you get when you, let's say you're wearing wool socks and you walk around on your carpet, and then maybe your wife isn't looking at you and you touch her elbow and give her a little zap. This is quite a bit of electricity. This study comes to us from iScience, and it's from the electricity generated by swarms of insects, like honeybees or other things that swarm. Hornets, locusts, grasshoppers, and swarming swarms. Now, the idea that kickstarted this isn't too far-fetched. The same reason why you can gather up a static charge when you're walking around in wool socks on a rug is possible with particles in the atmosphere. They start to get charges. And if you think about a swarm of bees, their particles moving around as well. What started the researchers down this path was actually a mistake. Biologists in England set up sensors to pick up atmospheric electricity. So they were trying to listen to various atmospheric influences. And every time honeybees went by the sensor, it screwed it up. It picked up the honeybee, and they put two and two together. They're like, wait a second. When the honeybee goes by our electricity detectors, it detects electricity. So the scientists didn't take a look at one honeybee. They looked at a swarm of honeybees, and over the sensor, the voltage sensor, they got an average reading of 100 volts per meter. And the more dense the swarm, the more power produced. Now, as scientists do, they don't just stop there. They thought, well, okay, a honeybee swarm is pretty big, but what about even bigger swarms, like hordes of insects? All right, so they took a look at individual desert locusts in a wind tunnel. So they powered up a fan, and the locusts had to fly in this wind tunnel, and they took data from that to figure out the electrical charges that it would produce. So from this data, they made simulations. And of course, they used the bee data from the original swarm, and they also used the individual locust flying in the wind tunnel, and they scaled it up to a horde of locusts. And what they found was the amount of electricity that would be created from all of these, like a swarm of locusts, is similar to the electricity that's in storm clouds. Now, before we think about a swarm of locusts raining lightning bolts down on us like Zeus,
The one thing that was made clear in the study is it's highly unlikely that they will ever, like a swarm of locusts, even though it could produce that kind of power, it would never discharge it. But the one thing that swarms of insects could do, and probably have been doing, is interfere with all of our electrical sensors. In fact, it's no stretch that a swarm of bees that would pass by a sensor that perhaps is scanning for intense lightning to have warned people might think that the swarm that passed it was a lightning strike. So there's every possibility that some of the warnings are false alarms. I found this study really interesting. And again, it's from iScience, and it was published on October 24th. Is that just makes a swarm of insects even more terrifying that it could be producing a ton of electric charge? That's science news for this week. This week in Pet Science, it's about cats and you talking to cats. And do the cats really listen? I'm new to having a cat. And of course, people on Twitter and social media are quick to say, my cat knows when I call. I call my cat comes right over. Okay, we don't know if Ginger knows her name. We're like, Ginger, nothing. But Ginger knows when you rattle a treat box. So we're working on getting her to come to the sound of the treat box. And we're trying to associate her name with the treats. It is a very, very slow process. But I do have to give her credit. She is super calm and chill and a very good cat. When it's time to work, she works for way longer than what I thought a cat would work for. Posing and looking and sitting still. She's really good. She's super photogenic. It's really easy to pose her. She's better at posing than Beaker. So this study came up on her feed, and it's a fairly small study, but it's about, do cats change what they're doing when their owner is talking to them as opposed to somebody else the owner is talking to? Right? That's kind of cool. This is from the journal Animal Cognition. Now, depending on who you talk to, and of course, I know this very deeply, the pitch and the cadence of your voice will change depending on the person you're trying to communicate with. If I'm teaching, I'm very boisterous. My next door neighbor complains that I am so loud. I'm a very loud teacher. I project my voice. And I actually lower my voice a bit when I'm teaching. I have a deeper voice when I'm teaching, and it's just like a projected voice, I guess. But when I'm talking to pets, I was like, hello, puppy. Like my voice is like very, very high and syrupy sweet, because they are so cute. You have to talk to them that way. So, of course, when you're talking to animals, your tone, cadence, rhythm is going to change if you're talking to a pet versus one of your friends or a stranger or a barista or a telemarketer, right? So this is what the study was looking at. There were 16 cats in the study, and they used pre-recorded voices of the owner talking to the cat, and then the owner talking to strangers, and strangers talking to the cat. Okay. So what did they find? So the first condition of the study was they played the voice and it was a stranger. Then they played the voice of the owner. And then the second and third condition was the owner talking to the cat, and then the owner talking to another adult. So they were trying to see if the behavior of the cat changed. Stranger to owner talking to the cat, to owner talking to random person. Now, while it's tough to rate cats on what they do, so they were rating the cats on behavior intensity. 10 out of the 16 cats showed a decrease in behavior intensity when they heard the stranger's voice. So behavior intensity is like anything that they already agreed upon was a cat keying into the voice. And when the cat heard their owner's voice, the behavior significantly increased again. So there is like a correlation. The cat knew their owner was talking to them versus the cat, some random person talking to the cat. Their behavior changed. That leads a lot of evidence to cats can definitely discriminate between random person talking to cat and its owner. There's a lot of good data to show cats make very strong bonds with their owner. So and it makes a little bit of sense. Now, in the second and third conditions, when the owner was talking to a random person, behavior decreased. When the owner then turned and talked to the cat, remember this is all pre-recording, behaviors increased. So the change in behavior was there again. The cat was able to distinguish, I don't need to listen, or I'm not keying into the voice of my owner. It's not talking to me. And then all of a sudden, now the owner's talking to me. That's kind of cool. With this small sample size, 16 cats, it's tough to extrapolate that to the entire cat population. Cat studies have such small groups, though. When we talk to Dr. Boll and other scientists that look at animal behavior, cat studies are there's always so little of them. You need to find the right cat that's going to be agreeable to the experiment and not just go to sleep or ignore everybody. So it's tough to find the right cat to have in the experiment. Anyways, if you think that your cat hears your voice and then maybe chooses not to do what you're telling it, there looks like there's some evidence for that. Cats understand when their owners are talking to them versus talking to other people. That's Pet Science for this week. Hey everybody, before we get to the interview section, I thought I'd let you know how you could help out the Science Podcast. The Science Podcast will always be free to download. You'll never have to worry about paying for it. But here are some ways that you can help us out. Number 1, check out the merch store, www.bunsenburnerbmd.com. The merch store has adorable gear, the Beaker stuffy, and now text from Bunsen. Number 2, think about joining the Pawpack community. It's going to be replacing Patreon, so thank you Patreon supporters. But if you aren't part of the Pawpack, we'd love for you to join. Our new community will take what we do on Patreon and supercharge it. There's going to be so many cool perks to joining the Pawpack community. Look for it in the next couple weeks. Third, think about reviewing the Science Podcast on a podcast player and giving us a great score. It really helps. Back to the interview. It's time for Ask an Expert on the Science Podcast, and I have science writer, podcast host, and filmmaker Brian Dunning with me today. It's a treat to talk to you, Brian. How's it going?
It is going great, and it is a treat to be here too, sir.
Thank you. Just real quick, where are you calling into the podcast from? Where are you in the world?
I am in Bend, Oregon.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful town, yes.
Oregon's beautiful. I don't recognize the town, but I have been to Oregon before. It's beautiful there.
Well, then Bend is the opposite of what you think of when you think of Oregon. You're probably thinking green and rain and clouds, and Bend is the opposite. We're on the east side of the Cascades, so we're in the high desert. It's a desert here all year round, and we have the Deschutes River flowing through town, and so it's basically just a bunch of breweries and people having fun in the outdoors.
Would I be close to saying it's more Montana-y?
Very much so, yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to remember my American geography. Being from Canada. Now, Brian, I follow what you've been doing and I listen to your podcast. I was wondering if you could break down a little bit of what you do with science and skepticism for our audience so they have a little bit of an idea who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, so the whole thing that I do with Skeptoid is I take something interesting from pop culture that a lot of people believe, but that's not true.
Yeah.
But it's not a debunking show. Instead it's a look at the true science or the true history behind whatever this phenomena is.
Right.
And so rather than, debunking a ghost story, for example, or Bigfoot or conspiracy theories, alternative medicine schemes, urban legends, kind of all of these things are fair game. Rather than debunking them, we take a look at the phenomenon. Why does it exist? How does it exist? And what neat lessons are there to learn from it? So everyone comes away having learned something positive rather than having something taken away from them, which is a sort of a negative process. Try to make it a positive process.
And you know what? I appreciate that because nobody likes to be told they're wrong right from the chute.
That is absolutely true. And, probably the first few months that I was doing the show, I didn't really know what kind of a show it was going to be yet. And this is back in 2006.
Yes,
your show's been running for
it's been running for so good. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, we're in our 17th year. And not a lot of people are privileged, and I do mean privileged, to be able to do a podcast as their job. That's what they do for a living for 17 years. So it's a very rare stroke of very good fortune. that I've enjoyed.
Now, this is this is a big picture question, but I am curious. Do you have a favorite? Let's start with like a Bigfooty thing that you covered on Skeptoid. Is there like a monster that you've covered that it was your favorite to talk about?
Yeah. And people ask me that all the time, what's your favorite subject? It's like, oh my gosh, every week. I mean, there's 850 shows. Every week is my favorite one. But for talking about like monstery ones,
Monstery
it's
ones.
always neat when I have the opportunity to scoop a TV channel. And this happened this year. There's a Bigfoot story from Alaska. There's a little town it doesn't exist anymore, but it had two names. It was called Portlock and it was called Port Chatham. And and the urban legend around this town was that it was being beset by Bigfoot attacks. Bigfoots were coming in, killing people, tearing them limb from limb, being very horribly monstrous. And it got to be so bad that the town was just straight up abandoned. Everyone said, to heck with this, we're done with this. And they just abandoned the whole town and they all moved away. And so one of the pseudoscience, pseudo-history channels on TV, I don't know which one it was, History Channel, Science Channel, Discovery, Nat Geo, whatever, they recently just did a mini-series on this. And as always, their series was completely credulous. They were promoting that urban legend as if it was completely true. So I had been really fortunate to get to do my episode just before their series was announced. Someone who knew about it emailed me a tip, and that's happened a bunch of times, and it's always fun. And I've got another one coming up in about a month.
Well, we won't spoil that one. But I wonder if there's spies listening to your show, Brian.
Well, there are certainly spies inside the TV networks who listen to my show because they're the ones who tip me off.
The other way.
Yeah.
Cloak and dagger a bit. So obviously this Bigfoot is very much not like Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot.
No, this one was not. In fact, this one, apparently the true history behind this town, why it actually was a real town and it actually was abandoned quite suddenly. But the reason had nothing to do with any Bigfoot attacks. In fact, going through the newspaper archives for the town, and I also I got a lot of tremendous cooperation from the people at a museum in Anchorage.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, they were digging up archival information for me, sending me photos and articles and everything. It was wonderful.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean that's an advantage when you get to a point where your show kind of has some academic credibility. You get a tremendous amount of help like this, and so it was a lot of fun to work with them.
That is awesome.
So basically, what happened was there was never any murders in the town. There was really only one crime ever recorded, and it was a fairly minor one. And there was a couple of people who disappeared fishing on a long, dangerous fishing trip in an open boat across a lot of ocean. But what happened is that it had to do with where this town was located. It was out on some peninsula, and to get to it by ship from Anchorage, it took a couple of days.
Oh my
goodness. Just because, I mean, you know how Alaska's coastline is. It's, in and out and in and out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they built the highway that goes down the Kenai Peninsula. And so all these people needed to do was move about 5 miles. And all of a sudden, they were in civilization rather than being several days away from civilization. That is the entirety of the reason the town was abandoned. It was basically just moved over to the highway. So no killer Bigfoot included.
This is like the old-timey plot, like Cars. The highway came through and the town had to be abandoned. So
yeah.
The other Queen was
there's another great community that I got help from on this was some First Nations language groups on Facebook.
Awesome.
And I signed up to 2 of these groups that were people who were preserving and studying and talking about the languages in this particular area. So according to the Discovery Channel or whatever the TV series, whatever network it was, and according to the urban legend, the people had a name for this monster that was coming in and killing them all. Off the top of my head, it was something like the Nantinaq or something like that.
Oh,
and I put this out there to these language groups. I learned that the language groups are so small and so incredibly fragmented up there. You can travel 1 mile to the next village and it's a different language family. So that's why I was in multiple groups. And they're like, no, that word's got nothing to do with any language we ever spoke.
Never heard that before.
Because you get this with every old cryptid, every strange cryptozoological monster in some part of the world. The true believers will dig into that local culture and find some creature or some legend or something from that culture's past, and they'll take the name of that and they'll try to apply it. They'll retroactively apply it to their creature. And they'll say, hey, you see, the Native Americans believed in Bigfoot. They called it the Wendigo or whatever. Well, no, they didn't. They never did. You're just making that up after the fact. And that's exactly what happened with the Bigfoot community and this old urban legend, is they tried to retroactively apply the name of this actual character from Native Alaskan lore. It's fascinating stuff. It really is.
That is, I had another question I was going to ask you, but I'm just curious. How long do you work on an episode of Skeptoid?
Well, it's a weekly show.
Yeah, okay. I know you come out every week, but it's like you got to hustle, I think. Hey,
this was one that probably took a little bit more than a week. I'm always working a few episodes ahead because some of them are slow. Sometimes I need to all of a sudden put an episode on hold because I have to wait for a book to be delivered or something. And I've always got a sort of a bank of episodes that can be done very quickly, like listener feedback episodes or things like that. Yeah. Whenever you hear a listener feedback episode, you know that it's because I needed to get an episode out quickly because I was delayed on a larger one for some reason. So yeah, it's basically about 3 to 4 days. It used to be a full week, but we're a nonprofit now. It's no longer a one-man show. We've got half a dozen people working here. We're working on multiple projects all the time. It's not just this one podcast. And I'm the executive director of the nonprofit, so I'm busy.
You're busy. Yeah, you're
busier than I wish I was, but that's what it takes to run a business these days.
Okay. Well, my real question, Brian, as a Canadian, there is a famous monster just west of us, and I don't know if you've ever talked about it on your show, the Ogopogo. Does this ring a bell?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Okay.
Yes. I have not talked about it on the show, but I have heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Loch Ness monster of this massive series of giant lakes in BC. That looks like a serpent, giant water serpent. Yeah.
That is one that it's on a list of, man, I can't believe I've never done a show on that in 16 years.
I'm just going to get razzed by Canadians if I didn't ask the Skeptoid guy about Ogopogo. So,
yeah, I haven't done a lot of lake monsters. I think I've done Loch Ness, and I think that's probably the only one.
That's okay. I was just curious.
There's also Champ in Lake Champlain in New York. A friend of mine who passed away a year or so ago was a cryptozoologist, and he was a true believer that Champ was a plesiosaur, a relic.
Yeah, that's the common thing. Hey, they're what was it? About a month ago, there was a scientific study came out that it basically said it was plausible that plesiosaurs could live in Loch Ness, but everybody didn't read it, and it was plausible it could live in Loch Ness, like millions of years ago. So people were jumping on it that, it's plausible, and they just never finished reading the next sentence. So
that's actually that's a trend that's been happening in academia in recent years, and probably it's been happening for longer than that, and I've just been noticing it. But when someone has a piece of research that's not particularly interesting on its own, they will try and attach it to some famous case or some urban legend. And I remember when that article came out that you're talking about, people on our Facebook group, the Skeptoid Facebook group, had already beat me to the punch, and they were already talking about that. They're like, this article doesn't say that at all. This is just the authors threw that in the title and their introduction to bring additional attention to their work. And clearly it was successful.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah, they wouldn't have gotten any press otherwise.
No. It was a good article, but I mean, it made we had to debunk our dog science communication account on Twitter was having to debunk it, and people were very angry with us for telling them that you didn't read the article.
There's another case that this happened a couple of years ago. Do you know the Dyatlov Pass mystery from Russia?
Is this the one where the people they went camping and died? Okay, yeah.
So. It was 8 or 10 people, something like that.
Yeah.
And they were all found dead, like under mysterious circumstances.
Super weird. Yeah.
And so, probably about I want to say maybe 2 years ago, some people came out. They had done some research on a particular type of low slope avalanche. And their research was not very interesting because that's not a very interesting thing. It's a weak avalanche. It's not very destructive. And so they said, hey, let's say this is the solution to the Dyatlov Pass mystery. So again, after the research was completed, they went back and found a mystery that they could attach it to. Suddenly, their not very interesting research became worldwide headlines.
Yep. I remember this. This was on CNN, ABC. They made Canadian news. It was on our Canadian CBC. Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the practice because it deceives the people who see the headlines, gives them something that's probably not true because, as we know, these articles, this research that was actually done had nothing to do with these urban legends and certainly didn't solve them in any way.
Yeah.
So it's deceptive and it's easy.
Yeah, and it feeds into a whole bunch of confirmation bias, and people will latch onto anything that fits their worldview, and away they go.
Yep.
Before we move on, for the Canadians listening, Bigfoot, remember, that's Sasquatch. So, or in the Trailer Park Boys, the Bubbles calls it the same Squatch. So I don't know if you've seen the great Canadian TV show, the Trailer Park Boys, but
I have not. But
you haven't?
Sounds like one that needs to go on my list.
It's pretty crude. It's very popular in Canada. Just heads up, it's kind of crude. But
okay, I'm down.
Okay. So we got a good framework of what you're about, your awesome podcast. Now let's move to the big news that we're excited to talk to you about, and that is your UFO movie / documentary / film. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. Well, so one thing we're always doing at Skeptoid is we're always working on a documentary film. Our latest from this year, I guess, is its official release date, 2022. It's called Science Friction, and it's on all the streaming services. And it's about scientists who go on these TV shows as talking head experts, but then they get deceptively edited out of context to make it sound like they're saying the opposite of what they said. Yeah, it's a horrific practice.
Ugh.
So we've got an hour and a half of examples of these, and the scientists telling what happened and clearing the record. And it's awesome. So Science Friction, you can find it on all the streaming services. And so the one that I'm doing now is, and I'm actually doing this on my own because the nonprofit is so busy with the other projects and spread so thin that I'm doing this as a little side project on my own. It's called the UFO movie They Don't Want You to See. So we're following exactly the same sort of science critical thinking practices that we do with Skeptoid Media. And we're teaching some basic lessons in science literacy and thinking critically about things that you come across. And as a vehicle, we're using the current rage in UFOs. UFOs, you're Canadian, but in the US, we've got our Congress people are having sessions in Congress talking about UFOs.
Oh, really? That's exciting. Oh, Canadian politics is so boring.
It's really not exciting. It's a horrific case.
I wish a moose would break into Parliament and just tear the place up. Have that on CBC.
Yeah.
All right, moose got in. Moose on the loose. Okay.
I think a lot of countries' parliaments could use that.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
So it's going to be a documentary film talking about what is the true science behind the UFO phenomenon. Now, if you are a UFO skeptic, if you are a UFO true believer, if you believe the aliens are among us, whatever your perspective is, there is something in this movie that will help you bolster your perspective with some real science. So that's what I'm going for. I'm going for something that's going to be, it's not a debunking film. It's not a credulous repeating of urban legends film as if they're facts. This is something that I think nobody has done before, which is simply to stick to the true science, explain what we know, how we know it, and how you can use the science to better understand this particular phenomenon. And I've just started production on it. We had an interview a few weeks ago in Washington, D.C. with an air crash investigator from the NTSB talking about some interesting things. And we've got, well, I won't say about the ones that are coming up because they're not in the can yet, but there are a lot more good interviews. And then there's going to be a lot of content besides the interviews as well. It's going to be very, very cool. And if anyone wants to, if you want to watch the trailer, you can go to theufo.movie.
Got it. We'll make sure that's in the show notes, Brian. And then we'll tweet that out when this episode comes out as well.
I didn't even know that .movie was a web address, but apparently it is.
Movie.
And I bought it. The UFO.movie.
Sweet. Now I have to ask you, where are you on the spectrum?
With UFOs?
Yeah, with UFOs.
Well, I
know you're a skeptic. I know you're a skeptic.
In any other day, I would answer that question, but I don't want to poison the water. I don't want, until this movie is out, I don't want people to get a preconceived notion, because that has already been a problem. I've had people who are science and skeptic friends tweeting saying, hey, here's a movie that debunks UFOs. Come and participate in it. I'm saying, no, don't say that, because that's not what it is. And then I've had people on the UFO Twitter hashtag saying, hey, here's a movie that's going to finally reveal everything the government's been keeping secret about UFOs. And I'm all, no, it's not that. Don't say that. So let's not poison the waters. Let's just say that this is going to be a movie that supports real science, that's verifiable and that's proven.
I love it. Okay, great answer. Let's keep it more broad and vague then. Were you a fan of the X-Files? Did you watch the X-Files when it was out?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Huge.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And how about UFO-y type movies? Do you have a favorite one of those? Like, X-Files UFO-y is like the
movies.
Yeah. Like First Encounters,
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, of course. I mean, that's one that's going to be on my watch list.
Yeah.
Something that you're probably not going to find on my watch list is something like Fire in the Sky, where it's sort of a fake documentary that's purporting to be of a real event, and everyone knows that it's just grossly fictionalized, and it's a little bit of an insult to the intelligence. So those are not my favorites. Most people who work in the sciences came from a love of science fiction and funky stories like ghost stories and cryptozoology, and everyone. We all love that stuff. So that's where I land as well.
Oh, I can't get enough. I can't get enough of science fiction-y UFO. I watched the X-Files like, oh man, that was on when I was in high school. I've told this story to very few people, but I'll say it now. Like I was like 16, 17 when the X-Files came out. And I had the biggest crush on Gillian Anderson, just a massive crush. She's the reason I became a scientist. And then later on, I met her at a Comic-Con, and I was there with my son and my wife. And I was going to tell her, I was like, you're the inspiration for why I became a scientist. And I just got tongue tied and I said, I had a huge crush on you when I was in high school. And she kindly patted my hand and she said, I had a huge crush on you when I was in high school. And the line went bananas and it was this magical moment. And then my wife didn't talk to me for a couple of days. So
good for her. That's awesome. Because she gets that every day. I'm sure she gets that every day.
Yeah.
That's very cool of her.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, well, we have just a little bit more time. Do you want to talk a little bit about a couple of your other films, or is there anything else you'd like to chat about before we move to the standard questions?
Well, let's see. I would say if I was going to suggest that anyone look at any of our previous films, it would be to get an idea of what kind of a high quality production to expect from the UFO movie. So you've caught me in a moment where I'm very much in the promotional and toot your own horn mode.
Yeah.
So
Okay, cool.
everyone should watch science fiction because it's important to understand that these TV shows that many people believe in wholeheartedly are being wildly deceptive in many cases. And we've got the proof on camera. So I do suggest everyone watch science fiction. And if you come away from that being disappointed in how the TV shows are mistreating their viewers, then consider contributing to the film The UFO.movie.
Gotcha.
Because that's going to be, you have to be an independent production, not tied to one of the TV networks, I think, to get out decent material these days. You really do.
Do the scientists have to sign something so they don't talk about how they're misrepresented? Because I would think that if they got misrepresented, they'd be talking about it on like Twitter, right? And it would go viral. Like, hey, this is silly. I didn't say that.
Well, they do. And that's how we found
Okay.
many of the people who are in the film is because they had spoken out about that. Now, they do sign something. They do sign a release. Yeah. But it's just a release that says, hey, you can use my footage and do whatever you want with it. You own it. That's what the release says. It's not a gag order. It doesn't say you're not allowed to speak about your participation in that. That's not a thing. I mean, nobody would go on any TV show if that was included. And so these people go on. The footage gets misused, and the studios are within their rights to do so because that's what the release said they can do. And then the scientists get upset. And in some of these cases, you're messing around with someone's career, right? Oof. You don't want to be an ichthyologist and then the next day have all your colleagues say, dude, what the heck did you just say on Animal Planet last night? You said mermaids are real? I said, no, I didn't. They misedited my sentence. So that happens. That happens.
That'd be so frustrating.
I want to be clear. We're criticizing a practice. We're not criticizing individual people, individual TV shows, individual networks, because the practice happens everywhere in the industry and probably everywhere in every industry. So we want to be clear. We're criticizing a practice, but this is a practice that really needs to be put to bed. It's horrible. It can be destructive to people's careers and it deceives the audience. I mean, I feel like
that's a plot from The Simpsons where like Homer edited somebody talking, like it's like just chopped together to say something they didn't actually mean.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, literally slicing and dicing sentences and rearranging the words, and we've got it on camera.
Okay. Oh well, you've got me hooked, sir.
Because we did a number of sting operations during the production.
Ooh.
When people who we knew were going to go on one of these TV shows. I've got a lot of friends who do these things all the time. They would have a hidden camera, hidden microphone, always in accordance with the laws of the state, because there are laws in every state, it's different laws, how you can record someone with or without their knowledge. Sometimes one guy said, hey, my mom really wanted to watch this over Zoom. Do you mind if I just put on my iPad and record this? And they always say, oh yeah, sure, that's fine. Well, they just gave verbal permission to be recorded. So that guy was in the clear.
It's like deception versus deception.
I did this myself. I was on a show, some conspiracy theory miniseries, and I was we were sitting up on the second floor of a pub in Portland, Oregon, and I had been pre-wired. I had my son sitting down below with a hidden camera with like a sweatshirt draped over it. And we had wired me for sound and put like the recorder in my left pocket and the microphone was on like my left lapel. And so here comes the TV show guys. Their sound guy comes over to wire me for sound. And I go, shit, I'm already wired. What if he finds it? Well, just by blind luck, he wired me on the right side. So I had two audio recorders on me, two microphones on me.
I bet you were sweating bullets.
I was for that moment. Unfortunately, the show was great. They treated me very fairly in the editing. So it was all for nothing, but it was a nice relief to actually be edited very, very fairly and very favorably.
This is fascinating, Brian. This is like Ethan Hunt and Mission Impossible happening right now.
I'll take that. Thank you.
So, Brian, this has been such a treat talking to you about what you do with Skeptoid and in the movies and films that you have coming out. We have some standard questions on the Science Podcast that we ask all of our guests.
All right.
And they're wholesome and they're silly, but we do mix science and pets. And the first one is a pet story. We would love if you shared a pet story from your life.
A pet story from my life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've got a horse story. Does that count?
A horse is people have horses, pets. Yep.
Yes. So actually, my daughter rides horses, and
oh, nice. Okay.
When we first moved here to Oregon, we've got space on our property. It's a horse property, and so she starts out to find herself a horse. And the first horse she gets is a rescue Mustang from the Warm Springs Reservation. Which is a very large wild horse population here in Oregon, and it's relatively easy to get a rescue and adopt it and make it your own. And so we got a hold of this horse. Her name is Tara. And long story short is my daughter paid to have her trained so that she could be ridden, but the trainer came back and said, I'm sorry, this horse is never going to be safe to ride. So it's just a permanent pasture horse. So it's very much a pet. It's like a big dog. She's sweet. You can go out and pet her and give her a carrot, whatever. So she's a great pet. And the story about her is that about the time that we learned that you know how you can do a doggy DNA test and find the breeds of your dog?
Oh, absolutely.
So you can do that with horses as well.
Oh.
It's not really a commercial thing. It's something that's done at Texas A&M University. They've got a lab that studies horse DNA. And so they encourage people, hey, send us, you're supposed to pluck about 10 hairs out of the horse's mane, because I guess that bulb has enough DNA in it for them to do what they do. So about the time that we were finding out, hey, let's do a horsey DNA test on her and find out what horse breeds she comes from, I was doing an episode of Skeptoid on the modern claim that horses never went extinct in North America. So just to summarize, horses were developed in North America originally, but they went extinct at the end of the last ice age. However, not before they'd already spread to Europe and other places. So for 12,000 years, there were no horses in the Americas at all. And until the Spanish conquistadors came and they reintroduced European horses. And that's where all of the Mustangs that we have in North America, the wild horses, that's where they all came from. They came from these reintroduced European breeds. So we thought, man, this will be great. We can do a DNA test on Tara and find out what European breeds she came from. And we did. And she's mostly quarter horse and thoroughbred and Trakehner. So but what I was hoping was that this test was going to be useful for my episode. We could say, hey, look, here's a horse. This is an actual Mustang, and its DNA does not show that it has any mystery Native American horse breed in it. And so this DNA test has debunked the claim that there were native horses prior to the reintroduction of the species. Mm-hmm. So I hope I'm not getting too boring and scientific.
No, I did not know any of this. I'm not up on horses, and I live on a farm. I had no idea that was the thing. So this is great.
If there had been, let's say that there had been some strain of horses that were native that lived in North America through these whole past 12,000 years, it would be its own distinct breed. And it absolutely would show up in the DNA of all of the Mustangs. However, the way that these tests work is they only look for the markers that they're designed to look for. There's no mystery horse DNA markers known. And so if she did have such a breed, it would not show up on any of these tests. So the test ended up being useless for the purpose that I was hoping for, but still it was fun to find out. So that's my pet story. I hope that's good enough for your purposes.
No, that is fascinating. That could almost be the answer, the next question, which is the super fact, where we get our guests to tell us something that blows our mind. And that I'm still struggling to wrap my head around that. I did not know that about horses. But Brian, if you have anything left in the tank, we'd love for you to share a super fact with us, something that you know that when you tell people, it kind of like blows their mind a bit.
Okay. I can actually expand on that. Or if you want something totally different, which way do you want to go?
I am at your mercy to blow my mind. Do whatever you want.
you're more of a pet themed show. So let's expand on the horse thing to something that blows your mind. Now, I said that the purpose of my episode on this that I was doing was to address the modern claim that horses never went extinct in the U.S. or in North America, including Canada.
Right. So
there are 3 groups of people who promote this, and this is provably false. I mean, by the record of environmental DNA and fossil evidence in the permafrost, that's how we know exactly when they went extinct and where. So it's provably false. But can you think of what 3 groups would have an interest in promoting the idea that horses never went extinct in North America? And the identification of these 3 groups is what I think is a mind-blowing, really fascinating answer.
I have no idea.
You want to take a shot, or I can just tell you all 3, but you want to take a shot?
I don't know. I'm thinking of something sarcastic, like saying the Illuminati or something like that. Okay. I have no idea, Brian.
Okay. Well, the first 2 are relatively easy to come up with. Okay. One of them is the Mormons. And the Mormons promote that because they've got horses are throughout the Book of Mormon, which of course would prove it to be false if horses had been extinct when its events took place.
Saw that on Broadway. I should have got that.
So yeah, Mormon anthropologists and archaeologists and paleontologists, whatever, have consistently been trying to prove that horses never went extinct.
Okay, so that's the next group then, like young Earth creationists.
No, although it's a surprise that that's a no. But yeah, that's a no.
Okay.
Native American groups.
Oh.
And not all of them, but some of them. And it's understandable because horses play a really important role in the history of many Native American Plains tribes in particular. Mm-hmm. And the idea is a little bit offensive to them that this important part of their history and their culture depended on Europeans giving them horses. Mm. So I understand
I can see that would be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And again, I want to stress
really that's a subject to even talk about even here.
It is, and that's where, frankly, most of the noise comes from. Most of the articles you'll find making this claim that horses never went extinct came from Native American groups. So not all of them. It is false. So not all of them promote this, but some do. Mm-hmm. And the third one, I think this is really the most fascinating one. This is the one that nobody ever guesses. And it's what I'm offering to you as the fact that blows your mind, is Mustang conservation groups. And you would say, why do Mustang conservation groups care about their past history? It's because if a horse is a reintroduced species, it is not covered by the Endangered Species Act. But if it is a native species, it is entitled to federal protections that it wouldn't otherwise be.
So they want their wild horses to be protected as an endangered species.
Exactly. So they are claiming, hey, they never went extinct. They're not a reintroduced species. They're a native species. Huh. It's like, whoa, okay, I see the logic now. But I never, ever would have guessed that in 1,000 years.
I didn't even, before this podcast, I didn't even know this was a thing, Brian. So I'm just like sitting here and my brain is melting out of my ears.
Yeah, Mustangs are a huge thing because in parts of North America, Mustangs are endangered. And in other parts, they are grossly overpopulated to the point where they're just straight up dying because there's not enough water to support their population. And so there's a lot of battling between conservation groups and government wildlife groups and so forth. So it's a complex situation.
This is a thing in the Rocky Mountains in Canada. Like there's populations of wild horses that this is like, okay, I'm connecting the dots with stuff I've heard on the news now where some people, they're like, we need to protect these horses. And then another group is like, they're kind of a pest.
Yeah. In some places they're one, some places they're the other. So they're both right. Huh. It's complicated.
It is so complicated. That is a complicated and amazing super fact. Thank you for sharing that, Brian.
You're most welcome.
Now we have time for the last question. And Yeah, this one doesn't have, this can go anywhere you want. It's called the important to section because we're all about puns related to pets and whatnot on the Science Podcast. Do you have a cause or a hobby outside of, say, skepticism that you're passionate about, that you'd like to talk about?
Outside of what I do for a living? No.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really...
This is your jam. Your jam is science education, critical thinking.
If I didn't do this for a living, I would do it anyway as a hobby.
Nice. Okay, that's cool.
Getting to spend every week doing something completely different and learning some of this wild stuff, like what we've just been talking about. It is so much fun, and it's such a rush. I just enjoy it more than I can say. And again, I consider myself incredibly fortunate to be able to do it for a living. So
you must have so many stories that if you ever go to a party and people know this, they're like, "Hey, Brian, tell us a story," and you're stuck for like 2 hours talking about Bigfoot.
I could easily be. You know, I get invited to events and stuff all the time, and I come and do speaking engagements. And people expect me to be the voice on the show, to just immediately start lecturing about something, blah, 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 blah. And that's hard. It's like I get off the plane and say, hey, I just want a beer. Can we sit down somewhere?
Yeah, you just like, I want to be the one in the audience. I want to listen to somebody talk about Bigfoot for once.
Exactly. Oh, my gosh.
Okay, I love it. Well, hat off to you that you found your passion in life, and it's a career, and it's a big deal. So just congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm very humbled by it.
Oh, so Brian, we're at the end of our talk tonight. First off, thank you so much for coming on the Science Podcast tonight, and talking to us about your amazing podcast, what you do with it, and your films that are coming out. Can people find, where could people find more about you on social media or like the web?
Well, find me as Brian Dunning on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I think I'm the Brian Dunning on Instagram, but I don't really do Instagram. Skeptoid.com. That's where the podcast is, and that's 99% of my life is all on that website. So
gotcha.
You'll find links to everything else that I do on there. And if you're interested in UFOs, check out the UFO.movie.
Okay, so folks, not while you're driving, but we'll have hyperlinks in the show notes to all of Brian's stuff. Not while you're driving, pull over to click on things.
Good advice.
Okay, well, best of luck in the future. I'm going to watch that. I want to watch Science Friction this weekend, and I can't wait for that UFO movie to come out. So we'll definitely be posting about that to help it along.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, it is time for story time with me, Adam. If you don't know what story time is when we talk about stories that have happened within the past 1 or 2 weeks. Dad, do you have a story?
I have a story. It's maybe not Chris's favorite season. It's maybe not Adam's favorite season. It's kind of my favorite season, but it's definitely Bunsen's favorite season. We got a huge dump of snow over the last couple days. I think yesterday it snowed all night and all day, and it is now officially winter. I don't see this melting. I think this snow is the first snow that sticks. And there are drifts. There are giant drifts up to our knees and waists in places. I planted my car just outside our garage and got it stuck. Now, why is this on the family section? Bunsen is a totally different dog in the winter. He is zooming. He is hopping through the snow. He is diving in the snow. He's like the happiest dog outside. It is hilarious to see how happy he is. And then Beaker can't move as fast in the snow, and Bunsen knows that, so he can really get Beaker. Normally Beaker can bug him and run away. Nope. Bunsen can just get Beaker, and Beaker can't do anything about it. So my story is that winter has started, and I think it's here to stay.
Oh, okay. I do have a story. My story, and if you've listened to the podcast for a while, we've probably already talked about this, or if you're like on Twitter Spaces, you probably already know about this, but Bunsen has a favorite toy. And it's not like a specific toy or like type of toy. Like some dogs like bears, some dogs like, I don't know, bones. But Bunsen likes a certain type of sound that a toy makes. And that sound, hold on, let me grab it for you.
It's a honking sound.
It makes a honking sound, and Bunsen loves the honking sound. Bunsen loves it so much. And when we got home from getting the toy, Bunsen was so happy to have one of these toys again, because as soon as he gets one, Beaker just rips it apart and takes out the squeaker, because that's what she does with the toys. But Bunsen was so happy. He had the biggest smile on his face, and he was showing it to everybody. He would sit on the couch with it. He was very proud of his toy, and it was so cute. And Bunsen's so cute.
He could care less about any other toy except the honking
ones. That's my story. Mom, do you have a story?
I sure do. So today I got home and the smoke detector was going beep, beep. And I was like, I can't change it myself because Jason knows how to change it. So I had to wait till he got home. Although I did change my headlight myself yesterday. I did that all by myself. But smoke detectors, they go beep, 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 and then talk to us. And I don't know. Anyway, so Jason came home and it's going beep. But then also when I got home, Bunsen was wild. He was a wild child. And Jason said, I did a research on sounds that make dogs wild. And
not wild, super stressed out.
Super stressed. Okay, so super stressed out, and the smoke alarm running on a battery is one of them, one of the top ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, this is what? Anecdotal evidence that your research was correct, because Bunsen was stressed and wild. And that's my story.
What was he doing? Jumping on the couch? They doesn't normally
he was jumping on the couch. He was panting. He was jumping on people.
He just didn't like it. He just didn't like it. He didn't get it.
No, he didn't like it. And he wouldn't let you go by, but then he also wanted you to go by, and then he just was out of sorts.
He probably was like trying to protect you from the weird sound too.
From the beep. Your call is very important to me. Please leave a message at the beep. Beep. That's what it was. Probably all day for him. So he had all day to be riled up. And that is my story.
So that is it for story time with me, Adam. And I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
That's the end of another Science Podcast episode. Thanks for coming back every week to listen to our show. Special thanks to our expert guest, Brian Dunning, who took time out of his busy life to come chat about skepticism and his podcasts and film. Very cool. We'd also like to give a shout out to the top tier members of the Paw Pack. That's the community that supports what we do. Chris, take it away.
Elizabeth Bourgeois, Peggy McKeel, Mary LaMagna Ryder, Helen Chin, Holly Burge, Sandy Breimer, Brenda Clark, Andrew Lynn, Marianne McNally, Karen Beth St. George, Catherine Jordan, Tracy Domingue, Diane Allen, Julie Smith, Terry Adam, Shelley Smith, Jennifer Smathers, Laura Stephenson, Tracy Leanbaugh, Courtney Proven, Fun Lisa, Ben Rathert, Jody Ogren, Brianne Haas, Bianca Hyde, Debbie Anderson, Anne Uchida, Donna Craig, Amy C., Susan Wagner, Kathy Zerker, and Liz Button.
For science, empathy, and cuteness.